We're back with some final questions for our week one asynchronous dialogue in column 2143, digital media literacy, and a little bit of commentary from Kimberly regarding the Blakeman text. Popular culture has existed for years, and it starts with the youth and ripples to mainstream culture. Now, with the internet and social media, does this allow it to spread faster? Yes. And include other countries in a completely different culture? Of course. Absolutely. And, the Spreadable Media book gets into this, that we share in a few different courses. The Blakeman book that is offered in a couple of our courses. Integrated marketing communication helps break down those chapters. Are very convenient and handy for talking about a different medium in each chapter. I think it's so reader friendly. We get a lot out of that. Let's look at this follow-up question. Can one movie light a fire and cause an entire generation to dress a certain way, drive a certain car, or listen to a certain style of music? And I would argue this used to be the case, right? Film was a powerful medium in the 20th century, maybe the most powerful. It's up for debate in the 21st century. We have so many competing forms, types of media and mediums of mass communication that what you have is, media content and media producers and media audiences fragmented, meaning they're heading in different directions. And there's overlap. There's segmentation, and so there's that lack of a single unifying force. But to the question, can we get an entire generation to dress a certain way? Now, are we dressing like Avengers? Because those are the largest, widest films being consumed now. Maybe not. Maybe at conventions we are. That said, many people do dress like Star Wars characters, and although a lot of it's ironically dressed or what we call cosplay, that sort of thing, it's not necessarily making fashion statements, although it definitely impacts the youth, as we know. But we don't quite see that idea of a John Wayne. I don't know if he was influencing the way people dress, but the way people thought about masculinity, for sure. Or maybe the way people dress when they look at a James Dean, right? The sort of bomber jacket, or maybe a Marilyn Monroe sparked this sort of lean toward a kind of glam elegance, tongue-in-cheek chic. I don't know. But there were certainly those iconic stars of the 20th century that left powerful imprints. I like this question, because I have a trick answer for it. Why is Wikipedia still a thing when we all know you can't rely on the info because anyone can post or change the information? Now, the quick preface is not everyone knows it. It feels like we all should know that, but ask around, right? But why is it still a thing when we know we can't rely on the info? And let me make a cross comparison here. Because Wikipedia is the fast food equivalent of information consumption, right? It's functioning the exact same way. You don't have time to go for the sit-in meal every day at lunch. You don't have, you don't have the money to go invest. You don't have time to shop for the best groceries. But you can't. I can't stop. I can't stop yawning today. What can I say? It was a late night. But you can apply those same principles over to the way we're consuming information, the way we consume media. I bet we'd all love to feel nourished by watching a show or a film, something like that, where we're getting narrative arcs and so on. But we spend most of our day scrolling, right? Because it's quicker, because it's immediate, it's convenient, it's your thumb, it's right there moving. Questions from Marcia. I'll have some counter questions to these, by the way. What is the main difference between open and closed punctuation? To which I would ask, I think I know which book, but it's non-specific. Which book are you referring to, Spencer? Which page are you drawing reference from? And what does the book say? Sometimes these books are giving us quality responses. And is there, different question, a time in writing where it would be more appropriate to use one over another? And I would ask, one what? I just learned that there is a formal and informal vocabulary. What is considered informal vocabulary? Well, slang is informal, shorthand, even the way we approach communicating on social media. We've clearly broken those barriers down, or people have shattered those barriers for us and let us all loose. So things like tweets tend to be all of this is assumed informal. Since the potential job employer doesn't send you a tweet to let you know you haven't been hired, right? Since punctuation and grammar are so important, why does it seem like poetry bends all those rules of proper punctuation and grammar? Interesting. I would suggest that good poetry, great poetry, knows the rules of grammar and creatively deviates in aesthetically pleasing ways. Does that make sense? So a lot of the best writers, literaries, the literati, and poets, they understand rules so that they can bend them, right? And that's part of that mastery. We want to have mastery over different types of communication, different types of critical thinking and assessment and problem solving and writing, so that we can in turn bend those rules as the situation allows us to, right? Or affords opportunity to innovate. Since pop culture seems to be ever changing, why do some things that are unique and different make it to be considered pop culture and others do not? And this is the difference between trends and fads versus something that has staying power, right? Like blue jeans, or maybe focused attention. Certain things, certain items get more attention, certain events get more attention, certain people get more attention than others, even if they should or shouldn't. And then there's also what we can call good timing versus bad timing, right? Good timing. Think about, let's take it back to a different medium. There have been so many fun conversations about the dying medium of print. Let's think about literature for a minute. We know that the great novel Moby Dick was kind of a mess, right? This is not a hit. This was not a blockbuster of its day. The writer was basically, failing at the craft, and it was after passing away that novel really picked up steam in the 20th century. Boof, right? You think about so sometimes a film or a book is ahead of its time, and so we don't quite get it until later. And sometimes culture and parts of pop culture work that way too. Do you think that society's moral compass has an influence on what is considered popular culture? Yes, and I would add, it works the other way around as well. Some things are considered pop culture never really seem to go out of style. Would it still then be considered pop culture? Yes, sure, why not? All right, finally, a couple of questions from Simone. looking at the Spencer chapter, Writing Well in the 21st Century. What type of public punctuation listed on pages 28 to 38 do you struggle with? When writing essays. You guys get personal this week. And I would say something I used to struggle a lot with, and I don't even hate to remove the used to, is a semicolon. Like, what are you doing with that? Where's it supposed to go? When's it appropriate? How am I using it? And I think the best practice, again, going back to grad school, when you're in the the trenches, just churning out work all the time. In terms of like writing work, being diligent student, a rigorous reader, and all of that stuff, is eliminate it, right? If you don't have a handle on something, let's not over rely on it. Maybe like our starting conversation about exclamation points. And then you can kind of reintroduce it as you gain mastery, as you gain a deeper understanding. One of the great things we can do, and this is the reason why we try to provide you all with so many different types of reading texts in your accelerated educational program timeline, is that reading is such a valid process. It's so valuable, so rewarding. It's getting your critical thinking skills churning, and you're developing new synapses are firing in all kinds of ways. The brain is working out. It's cross-fitting, right? And you're picking up vocabulary, you're picking up grammar rules by getting exposure to clear and quality communicators. Sometimes unclear, but but it's a process, it's a journey we all undertake. Give an example, looking at the Denisi text, when culture manifests itself through language, as referenced from pages 7 to 9. And look at the evolution of music, right? And music is a mass medium, or is a medium, represents a genres of mediated communication, right? Performance and so on. And you think about the way jazz was a kind of innovation upon earlier musical forms, and it was something that was calling into question rules about structure of and style and presentation of music. And then through jazz we have the development of kind of R&B and the blues, and then this just continues to kind of evolve and take these different turns to become hip hop. And then you have like a harder version of hip hop, and rap emerge, and then you see it fold back into softer variations yet again. And then today hip hop blends with a lot of other things like electronic sound, right? Kind of voice modification, and that kind of industrial or industry produced sounds, and it's so much of a mixture of things. And then language does this too. It's just it's so much subtler in certain ways. Think about the way even recently the emoji has changed for many of us. We have base face emojis, and now we have avatars. It's using the face scanning technology, but also our own curating to create likenesses that are emoting for us in digital spaces. A couple of final questions from Simone was, what is the best way to create a good following on Twitter? And there are many ways and methods, but certainly repetition is something a lot of people talk about, write about. Consistency of message, right? Having a consistent message, maybe knowing what kind of audience you're trying to reach or identify, what kinds of followers you're seeking to kind of curate, and then following others. And then of course there are ways to pay and acquire, but that's not necessarily what you're going for. That leads to the final question here. What is geo-targeting, and how does it help you progress on Twitter? And this is primarily, we can think of geo-targeting primarily as more a business method, a business practice. It's not something we're doing just for fun. You can go find people on your own on Twitter, but if you're trying to promote something, sell something, be a part of a business or organization, if you have a budget if you have a budget for social media and how you want to use it, geo targeting is going to help you, because instead of just firing it out into, you know, the reaches of the internet, it's more of a strategy of the paid message you're sending out. How is it being focused through algorithms, and what networks is it traveling? What, you know, in other words, how's it traveling the interwebs? Not just is it out there online? And those are two different things. What a great series of questions from everyone. Thank you so much for those. Look forward to more, hopefully, as we continue to get closer to the end of the course. But then again, these archives, being able to reaccess them, revisit them, to help everyone continue to gain a sense of the digital media literacy.